Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of transcendental names, such as Krishna and Govinda, in which you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are no hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda, Krishna, are your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I've fallen into this horrible ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipable Lord, unconditionally. Thank you, my dear Lord, for your kind mercy. I fully surrender unto you. Please protect me. Please have mercy on me. Srila Haridas Thakur ki.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. First, I'd like to offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual masters, Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who brought the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra to the Western world and all over the world under the order of his spiritual master and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, following the footsteps of Srila Haridas Thakur. We're here at this place in Siddha, Bakul. I also offer my respectful obeisances to all the assembled devotees. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha, kripa sindhubhyeva cha, patitanam pavanebhyo, vaishnavebhyo, namo namaha. Hare Krishna. Walking here, we know that we've heard in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that here at Siddha Bakul, Haridas Thakur would be sitting chanting. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would go every day to see Lord Jagannath, isn't it? And then after visiting Lord Jagannath, where would he go? He'd come here. So you were walking along the same lane or taking the toto along the same lane that Lord Chaitanya would come. Sometimes he would come himself to bring the prasadam, and sometimes he would have Govinda, his servant, bring the prasadam, but he was personally coming here to honor his devotee, Srila Haridas Thakur, with Jagannath prasadam. This is quite unusual. Usually it's the other way around. The devotee gives Krishna prasadam. Krishna's coming to give his devotee prasadam. That works too. So we were at the Samadhi a few days ago, and there's a really heart-rending description there of when Haridas Thakur, before he was leaving, he was lying down, and Govinda brought the prasadam that day, and he said, was there some disturbance? And he said, well, I'm having a difficulty chanting my rounds. And Govinda said, well, I've brought you some mahaprasadam, please take. He said, well, I have no hunger. So what did Govinda said, please take. What did Haridas Thakur do? You remember? Then Lord Chaitanya came the next day. You remember this? Lord Chaitanya came the next day, and he said, you're feeling some disturbance. He said, actually, I have no problem with my body. It's just I'm not able to chant my prescribed number of rounds. And, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, well, you're already on the liberated platform. You remember this? So, we were talking about the Raganuga, and so you're already on the liberated platform. You don't have to follow all the rules and regulations so strictly. So Haridas Thakur said he wasn't very happy with that Lord Chaitanya was telling him, in effect, that he didn't have to chant 3 lakhs of names every day. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, actually, I tell you, you don't have to chant 3 lakhs of names every day. You don't have to. So what did Haridas Thakur do? Did he agree? He changed the subject. He changed, here's God telling you, don't chant, you don't have to chant as many rounds. But he's changing the subject. Lord Chaitanya had told him, you've come because you're showing the example of how to follow the rules very strictly. And actually, you're an incarnation of Lord Brahma. And you've shown already how to do it. And you've glorified and spread the holy name all throughout Bengal, Orissa, etc. So, but Haridas Thakur changed the subject, and then he said, I have one request from you. So that's how he changed the subject. I have a request from you. He said, I know that you're going to leave very soon, so I want to leave before you. Let me leave this planet by having your feet on my chest and my eyes fixed on your lotus face. You remember this? It's very heartrending. Yeah. So Lord Chaitanya said, actually, the reason my happiness is from you. My happiness is from you. So I can't, it's not proper for you to go before me, he said. And then Haridas Thakur said, if an insect or an ant dies, what's the big deal? If an insect or an ant dies, as if he's the insect and the ant. There's millions of devotees. What's the big deal if an insect or an ant dies? And understand, this is Lord Brahma saying. Lord Brahma is saying, he's comparing himself to an insect or an ant. This is, so Haridas Thakur was giving the example of incredible humility, even though he's such an exalted person, chanting 3 lakhs of names daily. We just recited the Shikshastakam, and the second verse in the Shikshastakam, which is really a very important verse, as all of them are, but there's no hard and fast rules for chanting the holy name. There are rules, but they're not hard and fast. There are rules. And then he says, but unfortunate as I am, I have no attraction for them. This is Lord Chaitanya. Yeah. And then he said there's no rules, right? He said there's no rules. Hard and fast rules. Hard and fast rules. And then the very next verse he says, if you want to chant constantly, then you got to be, what is it? Hunter than a blade of grass, tolerant in a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respects to others. Now, is the converse true? I'm asking. Is the converse true? That if you don't have a taste for chanting Hare Krishna, that means we're not humble enough? Would you agree with that? You think so? It's true for me anyway. I know that's true. I was talking the other day about when I'm chanting and sometimes it's not working, so well. And I'm realizing that, wow, I'm thinking about, I should get back at this devotee. Does that happen? Yeah, it does. Or I should, anyway. So Haridas Thakur gave the example of how to actually be constantly chanting and have the taste for the holy name by his personal example, which was wonderful. And one thing to know also is Haridas Thakur didn't just chant japa. I have to ask a question here. Do you mind? What? Can I ask you a question? All right. So this question came up recently in a class a devotee was giving, who was giving a japa retreat. And he said that 90% of our advancement is from japa. Did you ever hear that before? Okay. I was questioning that because I thought, japa, unlimitedly important, yes, no question about it, but this is the Sankirtan movement. And, we can chant japa, but without spreading and doing the Sankirtan movement, I thought that was really at least as important. Could you comment on that, Prabhu, please? I concur. Okay. So anyway, that statement I was just a little wondering about. Yeah. Okay, good. So Thakur Haridas, he went with Nityananda Prabhu and under Lord Chaitanya's order, and when he was trying to spread the Krishna consciousness Sankirtan movement in Navadvip, they would form parties. When they went from Lord Chaitanya's place to Chandkazi's house, remember that? And there were different parties. And Haridas Thakur was in one of those parties. And what was his function in the party? You remember? Yeah, he was a dancer. So we get old and we think, it's too hard to dance. Does it even happen when you're younger? Does it happen when you're younger? Yeah. But he was dancing. Advaitacharya, who was like 89 and 90 years old, was dancing. So he was dancing. And in that kirtan from Mayapur to Chandkazi's house, they went to every single island. You know that? There's 9 islands. Has anybody ever been to all 9 islands in Navadvip? When you go on parikrama? Yeah. How long does that take you? 10 days, and it's a long way, right? So how is it that the Sankirtan party of Lord Chaitanya with Haridas Thakur could go to all 9 islands in one evening? How's it possible? And along the way, Lord Chaitanya went into ecstasy and was out for a while. And still they arrived at Chandkazi's house, with enough time to get him up before it was in the morning time. How did that happen? Anyway, Vrindavan Das Thakur said, Lord Chaitanya expanded time. It was a whole night, not of this world, but of Brahma. It's plenty of time, right? And some of the devotees, they had color on their faces when they were chanting on the way to Chankazi's house. Why'd they have color on their faces? What? Who said? It was holy time. It was holy time. That was the time. So holy is just almost the same day as what? Gaur Purnima. So this was like the first big Sankirtan day in Navadvip, and it was right around the time of Lord Chaitanya's appearance. So Lord Chaitanya's appearance, he appeared, with the chanting of the holy names, with the eclipse of the full moon, but also when the first big Sankirtan came, when 100,000 people came out, it was right around Lord Chaitanya's appearance day, and Haridas Thakur participated in that. That's a wonderful thing. I wanted to say one other pastime, a couple other pastimes about chanting Hare Krishna, following the footsteps of Haridas Thakur. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would give a story about a wedding party. You know this one? The wedding party. Has anybody been to an Indian wedding here? A couple of people? Yeah. How was it? Yeah, it was a big deal. It was quite involved, right? At least traditionally, it would go on for days and days and days and days and days. Anyway, so the wedding party, there was the gents, the men part were going to go on the way to the wedding party, and they had to go down river. So it was getting nighttime, and they came to the ferry, and they made a deal with the ferrymen. They got in the ferry boat. A lot of them got in there. They paid him off, and then since it was nighttime by that time, what do they think they did in the nighttime? Yeah, they went to sleep. Okay, so they're sleeping, and the ferryman's going, like this, paddling, and the next morning, they wake up, and they haven't moved, and there's something wrong. What's happened? What happened? And the ferry guy, what happened? You know? What was that? Well, not the tie, but the anchor. The anchor was down. Yeah, the anchor was gone. So they forgot to pull up the anchor. And so even though they were pushing and paddling all night, they didn't go anywhere. So, of course, this is an example or a comparison about trying to make progress in Krishna consciousness when you have attachments that haven't been pulled up. Do you follow? Yeah. And everybody's got a different kind of anchor. You don't have to you don't have to tell me what your anchor is. But we have an anchor that's keeping us from making progress in spiritual life. And usually, the early part of spiritual life is usually to pull up a lot of the anchor. But then after you've been around along, like me, it gets a little harder. Is this true? The attachments that you have, the first ones are a little easy, but some of them are really, really deeply rooted in your heart. But if we want to make progress, we got to identify them and pull them up so we can go. Yeah. So this system, as we were talking yesterday, dadati pratigrinnati guyamakyati prichtiti bhunte bojayate chaiva shadvidham pratilakshanam. The best part of association with devotees, one of the best parts is that we can discuss among ourselves how to make progress in Krishna consciousness, collectively and individually. what can I do to improve? I was a teacher in a graduate course in psychology. They called me at the last minute, please come and teach this course. And part of the requirements was at the last part of the class, all the students had to give a feedback to the professor. And the feedback was anonymous. Why do you think the feedback was anonymous? That's right. So because perhaps the professor would retaliate, Yeah. So in ISKCON, in Krishna consciousness, it's a really good idea to get feedback on how we can progress in Krishna consciousness, because it's not easy. We need all the help we can get. Some of the things we're aware of ourselves. Some of the things about how to make progress we can't see, but other people see. In psychology they call it the body odor. Just if you have body odor, you don't smell, other people smell. I apologize for that. So sometimes you don't see, other persons see. Or sometimes neither of you see, but you find out from the scriptures. So that's a really important part of making spiritual progress in life. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Vishnugada Prabhu. Maybe it's very practical, the last part. When I imagine getting anonymous feedback,
It was good.
I suppose the internet does some of it nowadays. Yeah, and thank you for reminding us how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so fond of Haridas Thakur. I'm just afraid to get closer because there's a kind of upper end on this. That he would come regularly here to Siddha Bakul to see Haridas Thakur, even though he was banned from coming in the temple because he was the wrong type of body. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came regularly, and one of the times that he came here, Sanatana Goswami had come to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he made his residence with Haridas Thakur. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came here, hope my dentist isn't watching. He pointed out to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there is Sanatana Goswami offering you obeisances. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Sanatana Goswami. At that time, we're in the midst of the story in which Srila Sanatana Goswami had come through the Jarikhanda region, and there were no facilities there for proper food or water. He'd taken water wherever he could, and he took some bad water, which infected his body with what are described as oozing sores. And when he came to Jagannath Puri, he was thinking that he would commit suicide because he thought, I'm no good for anybody. I am offensive. My body is offensive. Of course, this desire arose after he met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because in the time that I'm mentioning that he came here and he saw Sanatana Goswami offering obeisances, he embraced him, and Sanatana Goswami said, please don't embrace me because my body is hideous from these sores. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had had a discussion with Haridas Thakur and Sanatana Goswami. He first said that I'm not at all repulsed, because he said that I'm a sannyasi and therefore I have to see everybody equally. Haridas Thakur opined, I don't think that's why you're embracing Sanatana Goswami. And then Mahaprabhu said, no, actually, I see you both as my little children. And just as a mother is so affectionate to the child, he says, even if the child passes stool, then the mother thinks this is like chatusana, which is camphor, sandalwood. It's got aguru and saffron. I think those are the four. And he went on to talk about how actually the devotees don't have material bodies. And he described how when one begins to chant Hare Krishna, as we discussed the other day from the verses in Bhagavatam, one is transcendentalized. And he said that the devotee no longer has a material body. Therefore, I don't consider it odious to embrace the body. And he also said that the body of a practitioner is called the sadhaka deha. It's being used, the body's being used only to practice Krishna consciousness. Therefore, it's not an ordinary body. It's not a siddha deha. It's not the perfected spiritual body, but it's spiritualized body because it's being used in Krishna's service. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir Brahmagnau Brahmanohutam Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam Brahmakarma Samadhina. Anything you use in Krishna's service becomes transcendentalized. And hearing the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu coming here, you can understand how affectionate he is to all his devotees, that demonstratively every day he would come here out of affection to deliver prasadam to Haridas Thakur. And Sanatana Goswami also couldn't go in the temple, even though he was born in a Brahmana family, because he had been in the employ of the Muslim government, and he was considered contaminated. So he instructed both of them that they could view the chakra on top of the temple and offer obeisances there, and it would be as good as offering obeisances to Lord Jagannath. One of the characteristics that Vishnugada Prabhu had mentioned of Srila Haridas Thakur was his determination and consistency. And I want to say a few things about those words. Like sometimes we ask for inspiration to chant. But there's a case to be made that more important than inspiration, which can come and go, is consistency. The word consistent comes from Latin. It's cognate with the word in Sanskrit, sta, which in English is stand, which indicates that you make a stand, or you have a place to stand, or you have a standing, meaning that you have an understanding, and you also are determined to stand for something. The word's used so frequently, and it is with it coming from Sanskrit into Latin, maybe other circuitous ways it made its way into English. But my point is to find consistency, because inspiration may come and go, but consistency leads to momentum. And then momentum can bring us to inspiration. So the two ideas aren't opposed to one another, but you can consider consistency to be the structure or the container, and the inspiration goes within the container. And my case is that if we base our japa, as an example, on being consistent, finding a way to be consistent, then we're likely to find inspiration. And not the other way around, because someone, or I wouldn't say someone may say, I may say, I will say, many people say to me, but I don't have a taste. Taste is a very high concept. But having the intelligence to be consistent in chanting is reasonable, because we do it with a lot of things. For instance, many people go to school because they realize if they don't, they're going to end up working in a car wash, and no offense to car wash workers around the world. So one may say then, how do we become consistent? And I wrote down a few ideas. The first one, I was inspired by some ants. And I like ants. There are most of them, not all of them. Some ants are ferocious. I have a friend who had some books eaten by ants. They're white ants. They can devour a whole library. You don't know it till you pull a book out and there's only half. Anyway, about ants. They're very determined. Ants don't think about summer all summer. They also think about winter. They're working hard to get ready for the winter time. What about these ants? I saw in Italy when I was there for some meetings, we're in a rustic area, and I saw in the ground cover there were freeways. I didn't know they were freeways till I came closer and I noticed that they were populated by freeways of ants. And I looked at them, I saw them go into their hole, and I realized how, although they're very light, they had, through sheer mass participation, created these little freeways. How long does it take to make a freeway in the ground cover? I don't know. I didn't stay that long. But I imagine that it was due to regular usage over a long period of time. And I was thinking about consistency in relationship to ants. And I noticed that in any discipline that I'm practicing, consistency is the key. For instance, I notice in writing that it's better if I have a daily approach. In fact, I got this advice from His Grace Bhūrijana Prabhu, who's an author. And when I was writing my first book, or I should say when I was not writing my first book, he said to me, he called me over and he said, listen, I have some advice for you, kid. I'll tell you what I'm going to do for you. He said, just write one sentence every day. And that changed my approach to writing, because as soon as he said that, I thought, well, I can try to write one sentence a day. And when I started doing that, I realized his trick, because I couldn't write one sentence. I wrote a sentence, I think, oh, write one more, and pretty soon I noticed Nirākulā is saying, where are you? You were supposed to be here half an hour ago. I told you prasādam was at 9 o'clock. And you're lucky she's laughing. And I noticed that I had crossed over from taking a very, taking the consistent approach, that's the topic. And then I had slipped into absorption. And therefore, I took from the ants this mantra. and I thank them to this day, which is don't let the trail go cold. There's a way in which as soon as you stop using a trail, then it grows over again. And in writing, I noticed also if I wait for even 3 days, then I can't remember where I finished. Even if I mark it copiously, then I think, was it yellow or green that I was supposed to start? And if I wait 3 weeks, 3 months, then who knows what might happen. I might even forget where my computer is or how to turn it on. So consistency is helpful. This concept comes into our practice in the song by Srinivasacharya, Sankhya Puravakanama Gananatibi. The very fact that Srinivasacharya mentions that the Goswamis counted their rounds, as well as other things, and it was daily. This is what Prabhupada called numerical strength. Another way of being consistent is to find a number that you'll never go lower than in whatever you do. And oftentimes people are starting to chant and they wonder, how will I get to 16 rounds? And one of the ways is to pick a number that you will not neglect to do, even if there's a flood or a national emergency or personal emergency. You'll keep that number, never decrease. And another thought I had, and I forget where I got it was, but you'll never be thrown off the bus, so don't get off the bus yourself. Nobody kicks you off the bus of chanting or bhakti. But so we shouldn't step off. With a slight caveat that it's important to not be offensive, because there is a way in which if we're offensive, then we won't feel like chanting. You just lose your taste for it. In fact, I discovered it with book distribution also. If you're distributing books and you offend people on Sankirtan, then you lose your taste for it. So you have to be nice to everybody and follow the advice of observing the not making the 10 offenses. So first thing is consistency leads to inspiration. It's the framework through which we get inspiration. We should try for that. And it's not necessarily hard because we can start wherever we are and be consistent, and that momentum will bring us to inspiration. Ready for number 2? Number 2 is to notice, and I'm specifically talking about chanting japa, but it could refer to any devotional activity. To ask myself, which flow am I in? And here's what I mean by that. I've noted that there's 2 flows. One is the flow of time, and the other is the flow of absorption. It's these 2 things. And let me give you some symptoms I've noticed in myself, the flow of time in chanting japa. The question that comes into my mind is, when will this be over? That's the time flow. Or glancing at the clock. The flow of absorption sounds more like this. I hope this never ends. And there's a sense of presence and feeling satisfied. And then this bold statement that advancement happens in absorption, especially. And therefore, it's important to strive for absorption over time-based chanting. And the way I think of it is comparable to a kind of picture I've seen that's made of dots. I have no idea how they're made or what they're called, but you may find this familiar, you're supposed to look at it and stare at it until it switches into another picture. Is anybody familiar with that phenomenon? What's it called? Magic eye. It's called magic eye. It's also an optical illusion. So when you look at it and you relax and you stop trying to analyze it, there's some way in which you cross over and you see what other, and people, oh, you'll notice if people are looking at it and, Larry, I don't get it. I can't see it. And then, oh, I saw it. You switch over. And if we stay focused on chanting, there are times in which we can slip into absorption, in which we have this sense that there's no time. And it's important to have such experiences that you hear the holy name, it's attractive. And as Prabhupada describes it in one of his purports in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, said one may hear the name and be intrigued by it and think, I've never heard any other sound like this. That's a sign of absorption. So I'm saying we should try for that. And it's a way that helps us overcome what Prabhupada describes in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as weakness of the heart. We may wonder, how do I overcome weakness of the heart? And one of the answers is by having inspirational sadhana. That means coming into absorption, especially in hearing the name of Krishna. Now, as far as Harinam Sankirtan goes, we can be overwhelmed by the Harinam party, like today. We had, all of us, I think, unless I'm imagining things, a Harinam Sankirtan that was like a tidal wave. And the combined chanting of all the people, the ones that were in line, and then people walking by, and the old man coming up who must have been in his 80s, and he just couldn't stop chanting, and he had that look on his face like, okay, I'm ready, let's go back to Godhead. And it's Sankirtan, everybody's chanting together. You can achieve absorption. In other words, you're not thinking of anything else. It's just the name and everyone together, and this is a kind of crossing over into that absorption. And when we have that experience, we've really got something. That's the real wealth of life. I mean, I'll never forget that kirtan. That's one of the kirtans I'll never forget. Being there at that time, that place. You never know when it's going to happen when you're having Harinam, but it happens. And that's the crossover point from time into complete absorption. So we should try to live there as much as possible. And although it's not as easy with japa, if we can achieve that, we're following the footsteps of Haridas Thakur, because he was in complete absorption. Prabhupada points this out. He said you can't imitate him. And also, people who have tried to imitate him ended up... I was a guy, I remember in the San Francisco temple, right after I first joined, all kinds of characters showed up. He had a harmonica holder. You know what that is? So you can play harmonica and play guitar at the same time. And he put a picture of Krishna in front of his face. And he came in the temple and he was trying to show everybody that he was way more advanced than all us sadhakas. Because he had a picture of Krishna in front of his face, and he never stopped chanting, and he was circumambulating all the time. And then I think his circumambulation got a little further and further, because then he never came back. There were also characters, at every time we came to India, there was somebody in the group that would think they were going to go to Radhakund and become Haridas Thakur and just say, I'm going to chant 64 rounds or more every day. And when people told Prabhupada about it, he was not impressed. And he predicted, and it happened, that they would not be able to sustain that. So we can't artificially try to act like Haridas Thakur. But if we can follow in his footsteps and achieve some sort of absorption by the next point I'm going to make, is try to be practical, which is to realize we are the parent of our own mind. What about the mind child? The mind child runs, grabs, gets bored, then gets restless, and wants constant stimulation. Except for our kids here, they're fully absorbed. That's the mind is like the child. And if the child's untrained, then it becomes a terror to everybody in the world. And when he grows up and achieves an elected office somewhere, and able to terrorize everybody, wherever they may be. And just in general, people who are spoiled have become a problem for the world in history. So Krishna advises we have to train our minds. So we can ask ourselves, who's the adult in the room when we're dealing with our own mind? Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Indriyani prayanyahur indriyebhya panam manahas manasastu parabudir yobudhe paratastu saha. There is a hierarchy, and we're above the mind. We're even above the intelligence, but the intelligence is above the mind. And then he says you should make your intelligence strong. Evam buddhi param buddhvasam stabhyatmanam Jahishatram Mahabaho Kamarupa Durashadam. He's telling Arjuna to use his intelligence to stand and fight. He calls him Mahabaho, mighty armed one. And so there's ways to make the intelligence stronger so that we can be more consistent, so we can deliberately try to enter into flow, the flow of absorption in our practices. And one of the ways is to have Shastra-informed intelligence. As if your intelligence is informed by anything less than Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, it'll falter at a certain point. So it's especially important to read Bhagavad Gita, because as Srila Prabhupada calls it, the Vedic intelligence. He says that in the third canto, the second canto in a purport. He says the Bhagavad Gita is the Vedic intelligence. So download it. Make sure your intelligence is in sync with Bhagavad Gita. And how do you do that? You have to read it over and over again and become one-minded with Bhagavad Gita, with the principles of Bhagavad Gita. I experienced it when I first got the Bhagavad Gita. It was noticeable for me when I first got a Bhagavad Gita in high school. And although I was eager to find out some spiritual path, when I read Bhagavad Gita, then my intelligence was trained, and I was able to navigate the world, even in that very early stage of taking steps towards a bona fide spiritual practice. I remember specifically hearing about the 3 modes of material nature. And Krishna gives such a effective and helpful sampling of what to look for, that I noticed that when I was walking around, going to school, coming home, I could see where the modes are active. And I could see that my intelligence was becoming directed by the Bhagavad Gita. And so we need to do that a lot and regularly. Stay in sync with Krishna. He'll speak to us directly, and he especially appeals to our intelligence, because the intelligence is a finely tuned instrument. It's so fine. It's finer than the mind. And it's not as fine as the soul, but it's one of the most finely tuned instruments in the world. It's way better than AI. And if it gets tuned properly, then we have what's called Buddhi Yoga, we're connected with Krishna through our intelligence. And the intelligence, Krishna says, can become our Shiksha Guru. A Shiksha Guru. He talks about that in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And when we have that, we have what's called determined intelligence. This is mentioned by Krishnadas Kaviraj in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says, Siddhanta bolaya chitanakara alash, iha hoite Krishna lagi sudrit manash. Which means that, he says, don't be lazy. You have to train your mind. Don't be lazy about it. Alash means lazy. So he says, understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. Siddhanta means what something is and also what it isn't. Be very precise. And Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is precise. Srimad Bhagavatam, everything's perfect. Scrolling, not so much. It's random. Don't do random stuff. Train the intelligence. And then he says, Dridhan Manash. The mind becomes highly determined when it's tuned properly to the Shastra. And always keep the mind intelligence guided by Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. And remember, like in training a helpless creature like a dog. We had a friend, still have a friend. I don't know if the dog's still around, but he's in Japan. And he'd keep dogs, but he never trained them. And the dog, I just remember, was a terror. He'd jump on everybody. And he had no idea what commands were, like don't do this, don't do that. And so training is not a kind of violence, it's a kind of deep care. Just as if you spoil a child, it's not kindness. And if we spoil our minds, it's not a good idea. And then finally, in the same category of training, taking Krishna's words in the Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Abhyasa yoga yuktena, chetasa nanyagamina, paramam purusham divyam yati partanu chintayam. What a great word, abhyasa. You know what it means? Yeah, it means to do something again and again and again and ad infinitum. This is the lesson Haridas Thakur teaches us. And so the three takeaways: don't let the trail go cold. Even if you feel miserable or depressed, the world hates me, Krishna hates me, still chant your rounds. Do your prescribed number. Don't let the trail go cold, because if you give into that and you skip a day, then the sun's going to be going over, you really blew it, and you're amongst the greater population who is heading towards disaster. Keep numerical strength. Never decrease. Never get off the bus. Next is be aware which flow you're in. Because you can come day after day and be in the flow of time and just think, well, I finished anyway. That'll happen. But try to switch the flow to the other side and get into absorption. Try for it. Make the environment in such a way that you know you won't get and make it that you're trying for inspirational sadhana. Don't just take it as rote. I finished and therefore it's good. If you can have one session, 16 rounds, and you achieve flow for 5 seconds, 1 second, one bead, what to speak of the day, your whole life could be determined by that in that moment. That's how important it is to try for flow. That's why people live in ashrams. They move away from every bit of distraction. So make sure you don't have distraction and you can know that you're trying for flow. And thirdly, baby-proof your life. If you know baby's coming, you move all the stuff out of the way that it's going to grab and pull down on the floor, right? Parents? Yes. And in a similar way, we may notice that there are certain things our mind goes towards. Be preemptive and baby-proof everything so the baby mind can get trained that this is what we do, and once the mind experiences integrity and Shastra-informed, feels Shastra-informed, develops determination, then we naturally become happy and productive in our practice of devotional service. And I wanted to amend something I said this morning, because talking about the phenomena of, I said something about alignment. Do you remember that? Oh yeah, it was Ranchor asked about what it is that takes place when we have knowledge and then Krishna's mercy. I just was thinking about it after I said that. It sounded way too mechanical what I said. I'm changing it right here at Haridas Thakur's Bhajan Kutir. I heard a class by Prabhupada Priya Devi in Govardhan 2 years ago. I liked the class so much because she was answering a question. And she said, I can't remember the question, but I remember the answer. It's still resounding in my head. Everything's Krishna's mercy. Whatever we have, whatever we do, it's all Krishna's mercy. We're only dependent on Krishna for everything. And the idea of some mechanical point that, oh yeah, we change our alignment, I just didn't like that because it sounded too much like some kind of Ashtanga process, like get your chakras in line or something like that. But if we think more, it's all dependent on Krishna. Whatever knowledge that comes, whatever way we're able to do our job, but we should be really thankful. And part of that comes from just cultivating gratitude. Every day being grateful that we have acharyas who cared so much for us, like Haridas Thakur did, to set an example for the world. He wouldn't budge for us. So if he had budged, and this is true with any leader, it's a weighty responsibility to lead others, to have everyone watching you all the time. Because like if Prabhupada did one thing, like on a plane he had a 7-Up. There's no harm in 7-Up. But after that, he's smiling because he remembers. The devotees went crazy. Now you have to realize we lived a very deprived life. To think so highly of 7-Up. But after Prabhupada's, I mean, the word got out, who even knew? Probably Shruti Kirti or whatever said, yeah, Prabhupada had a 7-Up. And next thing, although there's no internet, it went all around the world. Next thing we know, there were 7-Up trucks backing up to the temple. That's hyperbole, but the fact was that everyone immediately noticed it and thought, let's have a 7-Up, and then who knows what's next. So Prabhupada was always really careful. There was once he did a program and he was waiting for the ride. The ride hadn't come. And so he was outside standing with the servant, and he was late, he was tired. And so his servant said, there was a outside kind of bistro thing, said, probably you could sit down here. Prabhupada said, what is this? And he told him what it was, and he said, I can't sit there. Because if someone sees me sitting there and they think, oh look, the Swami's sitting in a bistro, he said, what will that do for the world? So Haridas Thakur, although Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and said, hey, you don't have to chant. For us, he said, I think I'd rather die first than not chant my rounds. And then he just closed all the excuses. There's no more. If he had said, all right, yeah, maybe I'll stop, then he'd say, yeah, maybe I'll stop too. So we're really lucky to have this sampradaya that comes with these great souls who are thinking of us, and they're setting the example, knowing that we'd be here. And we have that to take with us, that our acharyas don't flinch. They don't budge. And we can't imitate them, but we can follow in their footsteps. Birds fly in the sky as high as they're able. The sky's unlimited, so it doesn't matter where you are, as long as you keep the determination and the steadiness to show to Krishna that you really mean this, that you really want him, and you stay steady. So I'm just checking the time. Hopefully I achieve flow. I didn't even know what time it is. I didn't even care. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. I didn't. What time do we leave? What? That's a lot. Let's see if anybody has any questions for Vishnugada Prabhu. Yes? Yes, Rashmi.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Thank you for the wonderful class. Thank you for the wonderful class. So I had a question where I wanted to understand there were 2 points that were discussed today. One that I took away. One is the anchor, which is basically we have to get rid of our anchors, that is attachments. And second, you also spoke about weakness of heart as a point. So I was trying to relate those two and understand whether how they are related. Like, are our anchors leading to weakness of heart, or so I would like to understand the connection between those. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Yes, the anchors are related to the weakness of heart. They'll whatever they might be for you, that'll make the heart weak. So it takes some introspection to try to understand them, but if you approach them and even try to understand and try to act on them, Krishna will help, and then you'll feel the energy he'll help you take up those attachments, and that'll make your heart strong. That's my understanding.
I really like that answer. It made me think of times in which, one way or another, I made the decision, and then I realized after I made the decision that that's when the energy to achieve it comes, and not before. I see it all the time with this is sort of, and when we go around to meet with communities of devotees and encourage them to increase the number of books they're distributing. I can remember a particular conversation I had with the board of directors at a temple, and my advice is that if they're serious and they want to move ahead, we look at their baseline and then we ask them to write a number on a piece of paper. They actually have to physically write it. And I remember being at the table and everything was fine until I mentioned that let's write it down. The temple president was there and the board members. And then it became thick. That, oh, I got to write it down? I don't know if I want to do that. It's like, that's the terms. You have to write it down. And when they wrote it down, I could just see the trepidation or the hesitation. And I could see the ink going on the paper. And they slid it across. I looked at it. And as soon as it was on the paper, then everyone around burst out with these ideas. Like, here's how we could do it. But it wouldn't happen before that. So there's a mystery in our own free will to say, one way or another, I'm going to do it, and have this breakthrough. And then if you decide somehow because you had good association or just because you're smart, and you figure out better if I surrender to Krishna, or both, and then you just make the vow you're going to do it, then suddenly there's a world of energy that comes in. That's what we notice at initiation ceremonies. It's one of the best preaching events in our movement, because even there's brand new people there. They'd never heard of Hare Krishna before, but they watch people. They know what a vow is. And people get up there and say, no meat eating, no illicit sex. They're going, what? No gambling, no intoxication, finished. And then for how long? Lifetime. There's a shockwave that goes through the universe when people do that. And I always feel like that's the most exciting part of life, is to challenge oneself to come to the next level. It's time to figure out what's the next thing I can vow to do, and then see what kind of energy comes in afterwards. Vishnugada Prabhu pointed to the harmonium, so I know he wants to sing. And I just wanted to point out that we have one of the best singers in our movement here. You heard it outside, but he sings bhajans galore. He knows all the bhajans. So if we encourage him, we still have 10 minutes left. Maybe he'll sing for us here. He's not convinced. You're going to have to go a little more.
Do you have Gauranga Boliti have there? Okay.
We're going to make our way back now. They've already gone outside to arrange the transportation. And could always make a prayer to Haridas Thakur before we leave. It says the great acharyas are very merciful. Dear Srila Haridas Thakur, if you so desire, please let us follow in your footsteps by chanting japa every day, not missing any rounds, finishing our vow before we sleep. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone who agrees with this prayer, please say Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Vanchakalptarvishya kripa sindhu bhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Nantakoti Vaishnavini ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.